The story, A Good Man is Hard to Find, is about a family traveling on vacation from Georgia to Florida. Before they leave, they read about a man in the paper named the Misfit who has escaped from prison and is on the loose in the direction which they are headed. They travel quite a distance when they encounter trouble, which we all know what happens next. The family is ultimately murdered because the grandmother recognizes the Misfit. Would they have killed them even if she hadn't recognized them? Why does she try so hard just to save herself and not worry about the rest of her family? And could this all have been avoided if her son Bailey would have traveled to Tennessee where she wanted to go? While she pleads for her life, begging for the Misfit not to kill her, she uses religious sayings to coax him. Was she even religious? And were her antics at all even persuading him? These are some of the questions I would like to have answered. In Article 1, it states that the family is nothing but obnoxious, ungrateful adults and children en route to Florida for vacation. As they are about to face the inevitable death by the Misfit, their grandmother tries to find some goodness in the murder in an attempt to postpone her own death. The Misfit is a symbol of both evil and an inability to fit into society. The family are considered misfits as well because they have no regard for any other person's feelings. The vacation itself is considered symbolic because they are traveling down south, which could be an indicator of how their life is about to go. The author saw this as a random act of violence, which in comparison is how she's seen society, which was going downhill. The grandmother was a hypocrite and tells her grandchildren they have no respect, which was shown by how they act and talk. But then the grandmother is an unknowing racist, saying things that she shouldn't say about the African American kids. The Misfit listened to the grandmother talk about Jesus, but shoots her in the blink of an eye as soon as she touched him. The story is an apocalyptic glimpse of what the future holds. Article 2. Even though the Misfit is a murderer, he is the only character with a sense of what it means to ask moral questions about human experience, and this makes him, like the Misfit we all know, Christ. The Misfit is being compared to Christ because Christ came with a sword and came to redeem through his death. The grandmother is seen as being manipulative to her family and is engulfed in a sin named pride, which leaves questions to discuss exactly what kind of person she really was. O'Connor leaves the grandmother's spiritual and religious state open for argument because after her head cleared, she thought the Misfit was one of her own because she saw how she was like him. She makes the statement, maybe he didn't raise the dead, to be more like the Misfit as if not religious, and is saying this only in an effort to avoid death that was approaching her. She is self-righteous and thinks that she will be able to justify all of her behavior. A Good Man is Hard to Find stresses the fact that everyone in this story is on a conflicting journey, and a lack of spirituality is lethal in the end. In conclusion, after reading these two articles, I have a better understanding of what the story is about. It never occurred to me that the family was a bunch of misfits as well. By reading through the articles, I noticed that the family was obnoxious and rude to the other family members because nobody had respect for anyone else but themselves. Not only was the grandmother all about herself, but so was everyone else. For example, when Bailey wanted to go to Florida and the grandmother wanted to go to Tennessee, it wasn't up for discussion. They were going to Florida because Bailey said so. The tragic ending was inevitable and couldn't have been changed due to the fact that everyone else did what they wanted to, not considering others' opinions. Instead of just keeping on and going towards Florida, the grandmother insisted on arguing with Bailey until she got away, and down the dirt road they went. Something else I found interesting in Article 2 was that the Misfit was being compared to Christ. Now, I don't agree with that because I don't see Christ as being merciless and rude to others. When I think of Christ, I think of someone who's nice, who shows compassion, and who is what I consider to be all things good, and the Misfit is none of those. I believe that the grandmother was religious at the end, but only because she thought it was the Misfit, because she thought if the Misfit saw that she was a good Christian woman, maybe that her life would be spared. But he didn't care because he represents what all evil is in society. When she realizes that he wasn't budging from all the praying, she started to say things that go against Christ, which is not a Christian thing to do and is frowned upon to challenge what the Bible says to be true. When the Misfit started to kill her family, she didn't seem worried about them, but when it came down to her life, she begged for it. When she got close to him, he shot her. He not even thinking twice about it, and had a hateful remark afterwards as well. In my opinion, the Misfit would have killed them even if the grandmother hadn't recognized him, because he is too far gone down that evil path to the point that he has no good left in him. The author Flannery O'Connor was really big on writing stories that had a lot of foreshadowing in them, along with religiousness in the South. O'Connor made the story one of the best dramatic irony stories that have ever been written. In conclusion, the family itself was to blame for their untimely death because stubbornness and pride will get you nowhere.